Welcome back to another episode of We Are Humanity, a channel that is geared towards trying to de emphasize the us versus them mindset and replacing it with a recognition of the obvious, and that is that we are humanity. So, in this episode, we will continue to look at um, build upon what we discussed in the previous episode. And in this episode, we're going to take a closer look at your mind, at the human mind, in terms of just some general characteristics in terms of consciousness versus the subconscious or unconscious. Experts in the field of psychology and neurology have drawn pretty clear conclusions that the conscious portion of the mind is relatively small compared to unconscious. The typical diagram that's used is that of an iceberg. The portion of the iceberg that is above the water level is typically associated with consciousness. It's the area that we're aware of. But if you notice, the vast portion of the iceberg is actually submerged below the water surface, kind of in a stealth-like posture, and that section is called considered unconscious. It's the portion of the mind that we're not really aware of, but is making up the bulk of activity that takes place within our head. So roughly 95% of the activity in our head is governed by the unconscious, which would leave at the other end only 5% being governed by consciousness. So a lot of what we say and what we think, we give it top priority, but there is so much going on within our minds that we're not even aware of that's influencing our behavior. So the human mind is somewhat mysterious. No one has mastered it in terms of understanding full of all of its intricate details, but thanks to a lot of pioneering work in the areas of psychology and neurology, we are gaining a lot more insight. So the mind is truly mysterious, and the undetected influences, those of unconsciousness, can often dominate reasoning. Where reasoning would be what we think, what we say, um, in based on our consciousness. So this diagram shows the vast difference between the conscious mind and the unconscious. I want to look a little closer at these two spheres of influence, the conscious being the smaller portion and the unconscious being the much larger. And if we zoom in on on the conscious mind, we can generally say it's what we knowingly say. So what proceeds of our mouth that we have control over, that's coming from consciousness. If you were to say your name, that's something that you're consciously aware of. And and so consciousness is what we knowingly say. It's also what we knowingly do. For example, if I set a goal and I work towards that goal, I'm influencing that decision on my part. So what I knowingly do or what we knowingly do, that is coming from consciousness. And you think of the myriad of activities that we engage in a day, consciousness is quite prevalent. And the challenge is we don't really have a sense of scale because what we're able to do in terms of how we navigate and the decisions we make, it seems quite predominant in our own thinking, but in terms of the overall scheme of things that take place within our minds, what we do and what we say is really quite small, quite minor. Also, what we knowingly think, the ideals that we come up with and put forth, a lot of those ideals are governed and coming from conscious sources. On the other hand, the unconscious mind, which is the gigantic portion of the iceberg beneath the water, using that analogy, is what we are unaware that we say. Sometimes we will say things and we'll say, why did I say that? Where did that come from? Uh, in many instances, it could be kind of something uplifted from the depths of our unconscious mind. So things that we unknowingly say, or things that we are unaware that we do, their origins can be traced back to unconsciousness. In the area of psychology, the practice of hypnosis is an attempt to extrapolate information from the unconscious. So there's a vast amount of information that we're exposed to that we're not even aware of, and it can influence our behavior in terms of what we unknowingly say, and sometimes in terms of what we unknowingly do. So the unconscious mind is how we are conditioned to unknowingly behave. And will start to take us now into the realm of social activity. Because there's a lot of kind of behavior that we exhibit that we're not aware that we're doing it. It's because of this mental programming, the influence of the unconscious, the vast amount of information that is governing our behavior that we're not aware of. Looking a little closer at the two spheres of within the mind or the brain. Through our conscious activities, through our senses, this is how we collect some of the information in the world around us. Through what we see, through what we taste, what we touch, what we smell, and what we feel. That's how we collect information, and we're consciously aware of that. So through our senses, the conscious mind gets access to vast amounts of information. But given this relatively small domain, the conscious can only house a limited amount of information. If it's like 5% of the activity within our brains, that means that the other 95% of activity is going to be in the domain of unconsciousness. So the conscious mind is how we interact with the outside world, and we're able to extract information that we're aware of. But the information that we extract from the outside world is far more than we are aware of through conscious means. The conscious mind has limited influence over the performance of, say, our internal organs. I say limited because if I make a conscious decision to, say, go jogging, if I think to do that, if I then start to jog, making that decision become a reality, my conscious is involved, but the effect on my organs is beyond my conscious control. For example, how is my heartbeat changing as I'm jogging? You know, can I determine the number of heartbeats, within a given time period that I'm running or jogging? And the answer is no. Those decisions internally are really under the control of unconsciousness. So the in the jogging example, my consciousness is simply making the decision to do something. But its impact is far greater than my simply deciding to jog. The impact on my organs, the impact on my muscles, all those things are also being influenced by activities beyond consciousness. Consciousness is also where our beliefs are voiced, sometimes unknowingly. Like I mentioned earlier, what we say, you know, that has some conscious influences, but not everything that we say is coming from strictly the consciousness. Unconsciousness, on the other hand, this vast reservoir of information and storage also collects information through our senses. In other words, what falls through the cracks, the consciousness cracks, goes then into the unconscious. So if you were really to assess how much information are you aware of from a given day, reality is that not very much. There'd be big chunks of information that you would remember, like maybe what you did at 3 o'clock on a given day. But there's so much rich information taking place at that point in time that consciousness cannot absorb and process it all. And so, even though we're experiencing, you know, activities on a moment to moment basis, a lot of that information, that rich information, is just too much for the consciousness to house. So given the vastly larger domain of unconsciousness, it can store greater multiples of information compared to consciousness. So it's just far larger, and so as a result, a lot of the information that we encounter on a daily basis ends up being a part of unconsciousness. Unconsciousness is responsible for the performance of our internal organs. Probably a good way to think of this is that, when we're asleep, consciousness is kind of in hibernation, but unconsciousness never hibernates fully. Because as we're sleeping, our heart is beating, our organs are working, perhaps at a lower level, but there's activity that has to be governed, and that activity is being governed by unconsciousness. For purposes of later episodes, unconsciousness is where beliefs are birthed and nurtured. So a lot of the information that we're bombarded with on a daily basis that falls through the consciousness cracks, if you will be housed in unconsciousness, and under certain social conditions, though that information starts to be nurtured and serve as a foundation for beliefs that we have. And a lot of those beliefs are exert their influence in ways that we're not even aware of. So the point is there's a mysterious dance between these two spheres of the brain, consciousness and unconsciousness. And this dance occurs within all humans, so how how influential the unconscious is depends on how frequently and how diverse the information is that one is exposed to. Some people, the unconscious influences are quite benign relative to others because of their limited exposure to certain types of information. Other individuals, the influence of the unconscious can be far more significant, socially speaking. So this dance has not been perfectly mastered by brain experts, but we are aware that there is the interesting interplay between the conscious and the unconscious does tend to exert tremendous social influence. So for better or worse, there is this dance that takes place within our heads that produces things that we're aware of and also produces activities that we're not. So if you found today's comments interesting, please like, If you feel compelled to comment or to add to the discussion, that would be great. And of course, please share this channel with others because there are some interesting episodes that are lined up, and I'm hoping that they will spur some interesting thinking and hopefully generate some interesting ideals and perspectives. So until next time, we are humanity. A united tomorrow must start today. Take care.